Hey there, fellow ChessGoons. My name is Anthony Urbina. I am a 2000 rated chess expert from Long Island, New York. And today we're going to go over the Caro Kann. And in this example, Gotham Chess actually goes ahead and beats one of the best chess players in the entire world, probably a future world champion, Hans Niemann, using this opening. Love Hans Niemann or hate Hans Niemann, there are some objective facts here. He has wins over Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, and Vidette, top 10 players. Magnus Carlsen is considered the best chess player of all time. Hans Niemann has beaten all of those players. Gotham Chess, who isn't even a grandmaster, is able to use the Caro Kann to play at that type of level. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to play this opening, the tactics that are employed, and some traps as well that will make you an expert chess player when it comes to the Caro Kann. Let's just jump right in. So the Caro Kann starts after e4, and the common response here will be e5, just looking to challenge the center. But there are more creative ways to challenge the center, and something that I suggest you try is c6. Normally in this situation, you will see d4. There are some other developmental ideas like c3, knight f3, but normally just d4. And then we go ahead and push d5. This is the Caro Kann. And really, you have to know 3 different variations in order to get good at this opening. So of course, there is the exchange variation, which is the easiest, and I'll show you how to play that. There's also the advanced variation, which is e5, where our opponent goes to try to take space. There's also a very easy way to defend this as well, though if you don't play it correctly, you could be in some trouble. And then finally, knight to c3 or f3, just trying to protect the pawn. We're going to go over these 3 variations and how to play them and some traps as well. Now, the easiest variation, and in my opinion, the best for black, is the exchange. So e takes d, and we go ahead and take back. And our development is going to be very easy. We'll develop our knights. We're going to look to get our bishop out to f5. Then we'll close up the position and then get our bishop to either d6 or e7. So what that development could look like, knight to c3. We go ahead and develop our knight to c6, knight to f3. Bishop goes ahead and pins. Notice that we're eventually going to close up with e6, but we want to get the bishop out first so that it's more active. And in this situation, our opponent is going to blockade the pin and put the bishop in front. We go ahead and play e6, no big deal. Our opponent is going to attack our queen. We play knight f6. What I want you to notice about this knight that went to f6 is that f6 is the correct square for this knight, but there are variations such as the advanced variation where this knight will have to develop e7 and then either knight to f5 or knight to g6. But for now, this is the correct place for the knight. Our opponent castles, we go bishop e7, and then after the rook comes out to the e-file, we go ahead and castle. One possible tactic, and probably the best way to go about this line, is if our opponent's not careful and play something like h3, we'll just go ahead and take this knight right away, and after bishop takes back, we have a really juicy queen b6 attacking the d4 pawn, and attacking the b2 pawn. This is a fork. You can't protect both pieces. You can see how quickly this could turn in your favor while playing the Caro Kann. Now, going back to the starting position, you also need to be aware of c4. There's an exchange variation here as well, and this is called the Panov. The whole idea here is our opponent knows we're going to push d5, and they want the last laugh by having a pawn on the d-file. We go ahead and push anyway. Our opponent is going to go ahead and consolidate, and then bishop to b5, looking to attack the king, and we have to deal with this bishop somehow, so bishop d7. Now, taking back is a bad move because we can develop either a knight or a queen, and we do it basically for free. That would give us tempo and prerogative over the position. So queen to a4 is the correct move here. Now, we're completely fine with this because this bishop is triple defended, and we'll go ahead and just take on e4. Our opponent will take, and then we go knight to d7. In this situation, we are up a full pawn, but the queen can just go ahead and take it back. But this is where the trap comes in. Knight c5, and notice that there are quite a few threats here. For example, we're threatening to fork the king and the bishop, and then our rook can go over to the c-file and add an extra attacker to the situation, which would be very bad for our opponent. Our opponent is going to want to put his queen on the c-file, for example, queen c4, because of course you also have to watch out for forking ideas. In this situation, we go ahead and play knight d3, attacking the king. The king is going to have no other choice other than to play king e2. In this situation, you would think that defending the knight is the best idea, but actually we have a massive attack here. We're going to be winning on the spot. rook c8 attacking the queen and also threatening the bishop that's double attacked and undefended. Queen takes back, queen takes queen, king takes, and rook takes bishop. And what we have here is what I like to call a positional trap. Even though we're even in material, black is now up 4 points because neither of these knights or rooks will be able to develop, and this one rook is holding his entire arsenal at bay. Let's go back to the main position here. Like I said, we're gonna have to watch out for the advanced variation. This is one of the harder positions to deal with because he's taking a massive control over our center and he takes up a lot of space here. But in this situation, our big goal is going to be to break up these pawns, and the best way to do this would be c5. Now, if he doesn't take this pawn right away, we just go ahead and play c takes d pretty much no matter what. For example, if knight c3 developing, pawn takes pawn, and queen takes pawn, but now we're in a solid position. It's no big deal. However, if he takes, even though he's up a pawn now, these two pawns will be impossible to defend. And in this situation, we're going to develop pretty much exactly the same. Knight to c6, looking to add pressure on the e5 pawn. If our opponent defends by playing knight f3, which is also a development move, we go ahead and play bishop g4, pinning the knight to the queen. Now the knight's no longer defending, so you have to add an extra defender. Bishop jumps in front, and here we could just play bishop takes and then win this pawn right away. But like I said, there's no rush. We can actually attack this other pawn first with e6. Now, as you notice, the bishop is attacking c5, and bishop to e3 would be the best way to actually defend that pawn. And notice, even though our opponent is up a pawn, these two pawns are going to fall right away. We will be able to win pawns back instantly. For example, bishop takes back, knight takes, and in this situation, we're even again, but our opponent has these displaced pawns. Our developmental ideas will be exactly the same. Knight f6, bishop e7, we're going to castle. We can even put our queen on c7, rook on c8, and you're not going to be able to defend this pawn. If something like b4 is played, we can just go ahead and dislodge that pawn again with the same idea, but with a5. If pawn takes back here, you can see that these pawns are just awful, and we do have an advantage. Now let's take a look at the main line, which is knight to c3, defending the pawn instead of attacking. In this situation, we're just going to go ahead and take. There's no problem there. Knight takes back, and then we play knight to f6. Best move for our opponent is to take the knight back, and we have two valid options here. We could play the Bronstein-Larsen, which isn't my recommendation, but it does lead to some pretty wacky and fun lines after e5. And then notice that both our bishops will be ready to develop an attack. But I highly recommend the Tark Tower attack. It's a lot more fundamental, and you're going to be able to have more reasonable and logical attacks. For example, let's say knight to f3. We get our bishop out. Maybe our opponent plays bishop to d3. We're going to go ahead and get our bishop to e6. And notice that our pieces are now going to be eyeing down the king side after this castle. We're going to have a really solid attack here. Of course, our opponent doesn't even have to take here. It's the best option, but a lot of times your opponent might just go ahead and play knight g3, not wanting to trade off the knights. In this situation, we can go ahead and push the pawn to h5, looking to dislodge this knight here on the g3 square. If our opponent goes ahead and plays bishop g5, looking to take this knight, we go ahead and push h4. Notice the rook is defending this pawn, so the bishop can't take, but bishop taking the knight, and here, while it might make sense to take this bishop, it's much better and in fact completely winning to go ahead and play h takes g. Notice in this situation, the bishop is still hanging, so bishop to e5, attacking the pawn. A majority of players here will actually go ahead and play g takes f, checking the king. But this is a mistake, and this is actually losing for you. We actually have a forced win on the spot. Let me know if you can find it. Rook takes on h2. What do? If rook takes, we have an insane line. Go queen a5, queen blocks, queen takes bishop, pawn takes, and then pawn takes here. And in this situation, we're threading the knight and we're looking to recreate a queen. Now, from this opening, there is one more line you should be aware of, and it's called the fantasy variation. It starts after f3, looking to defend this pawn here. We can actually destroy this in a number of different ways. There are two traps that I think you should definitely keep an eye out for. The first idea is to go ahead and push e5. In this situation, if our opponent takes, we're just going to go ahead and develop our bishop, looking to eye down this f2 square, which will become a big weakness later on. Let's say our opponent takes again. He's actually already lost because of queen b6. Now there is a massive attack on f2. And if our opponent's not careful and doesn't protect this threat properly, let's say knight to e2, just developing his pieces, it's actually maiden 2. And let me know if you can find the maiden 2 here. Yeah, so it's bishop f2. The king's gonna move over to d2, and then queen e3, checkmate. There's nowhere to go. Now, of course, in this situation, our opponent doesn't need to take. He could just go ahead and play c3, just reinforcing the center. But here we play d takes e, queen h4, and notice that our opponent is already losing because after g3, we have queen e4, and we're forking the king and the rook. This is a very common motif. Overall, guys, this is your comprehensive guide to the Caro Kann. Let me know in the comments section which of these lines you found to be the most interesting and which traps you see yourself using in the future. This video below will be a comprehensive guide to my personal favorite opening, the Queen's Gambit. Stay classy, my friends. Until next time.